Welcome to the Monday edition of Weather to Watch. It's the 17th of November, and yes, that slide is talking about two things, Thanksgiving and snow, and that's the northern plains. Included in that would be Denver, Minneapolis. We'll talk a little bit more about that. A lot of speculation since that's over a week away, but the Climate Prediction Center has actually pulled the trigger on this, and I'll show you the jet stream pattern that might be responsible for that. But before we even get to that, we've got some other interesting weather going on right now. There are two distinct swirls in the atmosphere. This one off the northeast coast of Maine over in eastern Canada. One very clearly here just north of Denver. And more of a twisting motion here in California. I'll tell you what each of these storms is responsible for. First of all, let's identify them. And I took this snapshot a little later when the sunset was making it across the country. And I've explained this before. So this is the visible satellite image. This is basically like having a camera in space, totally generated by reflection of sunlight off of clouds, whereas this is implied clouds, inferred clouds, by looking at temperature change. Either way, you can see the center of that one low with that one circulation, the other one there north of Denver. Kind of a lack, really, of a lot of precipitation here. A couple of thunderstorms did pop up here in southwest Missouri and moved into central Missouri, some hail producers there. And there might be a few more of those hiding tonight here as this system progresses in, but not a major severe weather threat. Meanwhile, another one of these lows, and remember on the last video I talked about a series of these. So here's number one, here's number two, and there are more coming on from the Pacific into the southwest in one way, shape, or form. And that's helped me to carve out a trough of low pressure here that's going to be important for that Thanksgiving snow in the northern plains, and we'll discuss that. On the surface map, just looking at the whole U.S., high pressure goes from North Florida all the way through the Great Lakes, the center of which is way up in south central Canada, really. We have a triple kind of setup here. If this were a real out-of-control severe weather event, we'd be watching for some storm development here, but the moisture is a little lacking. There are some parameters that are trying to come together for some storms here tonight. And the storms I mentioned before were north and east of the warm front, and almost always those storms are going to be hail producers, maybe some gusty winds, and that's exactly what happened. Meanwhile, we have another couple of frontal systems, really, one here in California with a surface low, and another one up here in western Canada. Let's focus in on that south-central storm. These are temperatures, I believe I've grabbed this at about 4 o'clock Central Standard Time. Readings are in the 60s, or at least these are model forecasts in the 60s, and then model forecasts in the 80s here through Oklahoma and down into Texas with the low pressure area roughly in central and western Texas. Wind gusts are a real factor today. Springfield, where I reside, had a 35 mile per hour wind gust when I snapped this, and if you see the yellow shading like here and here, and of course here, these are 30 mile per hour wind gusts. So it's been a pretty windy transition here, and this low is trying its best to draw moisture up, like I said, but it's not a real big severe weather risk. If anything does develop, it would probably just be hail producing and probably would drift from Oklahoma and Kansas into Missouri here later on this evening. Let's take a look at the heavy rain. The general view hasn't changed since my last video. We still have this belt of pretty healthy rains, although the totals over the next 5 days are a little less than they were earlier. This is the human forecast. This is the Weather Prediction Center's forecast, not any one model. And meanwhile, the southwestern U.S. continues to pick up a lot of rain, too. One storm after another. Let's zoom in on a couple of things here. 2 to 3 inch totals in the central Ohio River Valley, also from southwest Missouri down into Oklahoma. And we can kind of shift and show you that. So Springfield 1.8. We're getting 2 inch totals, a little bit more around Fort Smith, maybe over to Oklahoma City. Just kind of patchy all the way down into Texas. Just a reoccurring pattern where front's going to stall and systems are just going to roll over the moisture and wring out rain systems. Maybe a little bit more than that when all is said and done. And then this is the rain and snow that's occurring over the next 5 days in California, Arizona, southern Nevada, parts of Utah, And we got some patchy 3-inch totals there through Arizona, perhaps. And you can always tell the mountain ranges by the way these precipitation areas are shaped, and they're enhanced because of orographic lifting. So in other words, the air is lifted over the mountain and you wring out more precipitation. In this case, most of that's going to be snow over the next 5 days, and I'll show you a separate graph for that in a minute where the warnings are. But first, let's cover the watches. These are flash flood watches out, including the city of Las Vegas, actually just flood watches, and down into parts of Arizona and in the central valleys there of California. And then meanwhile, we have winter storm warnings in effect for some of the higher elevations of southern Nevada. And also the same can be said, except it's a winter weather advisory for these mountainous areas in eastern parts of California. And then we look at the precipitation here. This is the rain hazards. We just had to shift to snow real quick there. This is through the 20th through the 24th. Now, this is a heavy rain system that will produce heavy rain on the 20th from the Ozarks down into Arizona, and that extends to 23rd and the 24th for this entire. So this area here and then this area here are all under heavy rain risk, along with that area of California. So this is the 20th through the 24th. This is leading up to Thanksgiving. And this is the warm side of the storm. There's a cold side, so that's where that snow is coming from. But on the 6 to 10 day precipitation possibility, now this does not bother to separate rain from snow. This is just precipitation. So this is Sunday through Thursday. A pretty high confidence that Oklahoma and Texas in particular are at the epicenter of some pretty wet weather conditions. But notice up here in Montana, there's a little bit of a higher confidence too. And then finally in that period, a little bit of California begins to dry out a little bit. Take a look at the temperatures. Tuesday brags a 75-degree high in Springfield, Missouri, 87 in Dallas. A little bit of cool air in the northeast, and with all that rain and cloud cover still circulating in California and all those areas where I showed you the flood watch, all pretty cool for this time of year. Then again, the colors indicate how far below normal in the case of green and blue, and how far above normal in the case of the oranges and the reds. And these readings here from the Ozarks down into Texas are about 15 to 18 degrees above the normal highs for this time of year. If we go ahead to Thursday, this warmth really takes over more. It takes a bigger bite out of the cool air in the northeast, shifts into Alabama, Georgia, even parts of South Carolina, lessens maybe a little bit. And this actually expands a little bit with more weather systems coming ashore in the southwest. And then finally, by Saturday, when that rain starts to kick in here in the Central Plains, we finally get some below normal readings with regard to that. And pretty warm, even though 50 doesn't sound toasty in North Dakota, that's still much above normal for them. And then on the 6 to 10 day possibility, the eastern 2/3 of the United States forecast to be fairly warm during this period, with the southwest and the northwest corners of the country maybe slightly below normal. Now, finally, last couple of slides, let's take a look at that snow. Now, of course, again, remind you that that's over a week away. So the only reason I'm putting this up is because I do see that the EPS, this is the standard, this basically takes the average of all the ensemble runs of the European model, 500 millibar, runs them together and determines what the mean will be on the 26th. So you see this trough right here. This is actually showing up on the Euro model and also on the United States GFS model ensembles. So there's cooler air trap behind this. But the real question this many days out is how much, and will things like this little jet streak help to dig a system out here and really wrap up a surface low, which is what a lot of people are thinking will happen, and it kind of travels up in this direction. That could happen. All I'll show you at this point is that, yes, the Climate Prediction Center has put the slight risk, that's this bottom one here, 20 to 40% chance of some snow hazards in these areas from Nebraska to the Canadian border, all of Minnesota, a good chunk of northwest Wisconsin, and almost all of Colorado too, including the Denver area, be cold enough according to these forecasters, through Wyoming and up into Montana as well. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.